Hey everyone, so here will be the trade recap for Euro US dollar as well as GBP US dollar on the 20th of September. So yesterday was quite a frustrating day, I must admit, because I took one loss, one break even, and then after that, finally I managed to get a winner by the end of the day in New York session. So I'll show you the losses so that hopefully you can learn from them as well. So if we look at EU first, we can currently see that we have swept the previous lows over at the bottom and we shifted structure bullish. So right now we're currently trading in this range yesterday, and we can see that price has been holding the 4-hour demand zone, creating a 15-minute demand chain. So it shows that buyers are still in control over here. And if we drop down to the 15-minute, we can see that price on the 15-minute has shifted bullish over here with this first break of structure after tapping into the 4-hour demand. We continued moving up, breaking structure, minor structure over here yesterday during the New York session. So once we broke above these highs yesterday during New York, I was expecting price to come into either this demand or this one over here. Because I wasn't at the charts physically, I put a limit order at this point over here because I saw that we had already cleared these highs with a body closure above. So I was expecting higher prices towards this 4-hour sell zone. However, as we can see, the trade very quickly hit stop loss. So this was the loss that I was taking during the London session yesterday. Even though I had another 15-minute demand zone over here, I did not put a limit order at this point in time because clearly if price is not even holding this demand here, I need to see further confirmations before I put in another order to go long from this point here. That was the loss yesterday for -1R. And if we go on to GU, so for GU yesterday, let's go on to the 4-hour. So we can see that previously we broke structure on the 4-hour below. We're currently trading below it. We have held this 2-hour sell zone. So if I were to go down, you'll see that this was the range. I cleaned it up using a 2-hour time frame. We held it, price started to push down, and yesterday during the forecast I mentioned that once we hit this 2-hour sell zone, even though the 15-minute had shifted structure bullish, we did actually fail to close above these highs here. So we can see that liquidity was swept above these highs here. Price failed to close above this area here, held the 2-hour zone, and then started to push down, breaking minor structure. So for me, I mentioned that if you were to look for shorts over here, you need to be very aggressive with it because the 15-minute is trading in a range. Yes, you're coming from a discounted area for sells in this 15-minute swing leg. However, you are going counter trend against the overall higher time frame, which is bearish. Once price hit this area during the London session, I went down to the 1-minute, and this was where I took my break-even trade because price hit the 15-minute sell zone on the first tap over at this point here. This was pre-London Open, so we did break structure over here, but it was not convincing because it was only with wicks. So I then waited for it to show more bearish confirmations before I actually took the short. And once we reached the extreme of the 15-minute sell zone, we started to see structure shift bearish. So this was where I took my first trade on the retest to come down lower. So where I was aiming for was actually this original 15-minute demand zone right at the bottom here in the discounted area of price of this 15-minute swing leg. So as you can see, if I go back to the 1-minute, this trade actually ended up as a break even because it pulled back up to my entry over at this point in time. So where I went break even on this idea over here, so entry, let me put it properly for you guys. Entry was actually over on this candle over here when we retested into that 1-minute sell zone where we had the first market structure shift over when we cleared these lows here after tapping into the 15-minute sell zone. This was the pullback entry to go short. Once we cleared these lows here, I actually went break even on the trade. So price continued to push down lower and I was off the charts by that time, and then after that I got stopped out at break even over at this point here before price even managed to reach any of the 15-minute demand zones at the bottom. So this was the London session. That was the break even trade that I took. And then when we came into New York session, if I go up to the 15-minute for you to see, let's just clear this away first. So we can see that price actually starting to form a supply chain over at this point here. So we started off with the 2-hour, price held the 15-minute, came down, broke minor structure again, created this new 15-minute sell zone, and then we shifted market structure over at this point over here. So if you look at this little tiny arrow that I have, this was where I saw that, okay, we might have a minor structure break over here. So I was waiting on the 1 minute because the 15 minute had already shifted its structure, held the sell zone, failed to close above the previous highs once we tapped into that 2-hour sell zone. So I was short biased towards these areas at the bottom here as I forecasted yesterday. Potentially I was looking for longs to continue on the bullish trend. However, when I saw that price actually failed to clear all these highs above here, it seems to me that we are still heavily bearish in line with the higher time frame, so I just continued to short it following the bearish order flow. So if we go back down to the 1 minute, I noticed in the New York session, just let me find the price. So this was the second 15-minute sell zone that formed. I noticed that when price hit it over here again, we had multiple shifts in momentum. So the first one that I noticed was actually here. So price came into the sell zone. This was the first tap. It did not break structure over here, but when we started to push deeper, this was the first structure break. However, this timing, I don't trade it because New York is not open yet, so I was waiting for the New York open volume to kick in for me, so which is lucky that I did, because we can see that if I entered at this sell zone over here, I would have gotten stopped out when price went deeper into the 15-minute sell zone at this point. So once price actually shifted bearish again after hitting the extreme of the 15-minute sell zone, I was looking for shorts initially from this area. However, I noticed that we had this 1 minute demand zone being created here, causing the push into the 15-minute sell zone. When price tapped it, I noticed that price stopped. So for me, I was already short biased. I was looking for signs that the sellers were actually still in control. So this price action is a bit tricky because we can see that over here, if we look at this demand zone over here, we tapped in first at this point here, and then after that we pushed down and we broke the low of that reaction candle. So to me, I knew that this zone was going to go. So I was looking at this wick here over that swept the liquidity. That was the last high before we actually broke the zone. So I noticed that there was actually a chain forming over here, which I traded when price hit this area. This phenomenon over here is what I would consider a flip zone. So flip zones are best traded when you already have a confirmation from higher time frames. So like I mentioned, we held the 15-minute sell zone, we shifted bearish. In London, we also held the 15-minute sell zone. So let me go back up to the 15 and I'll show you. So we held the 2 hour, we shifted bearish, breaking minor structure. And then after that, we came up, held the 15-minute sell zone, broke minor structure again, failed to break the high. So all these were confirmations that I should be going short from this whole area over here. So if we then go down to the New York session trade, once I noticed this demand zone failing over here after sweeping all the liquidity within this internal range here, when we had this supply chain, I was willing to give it a chance. So I took the trade over at this point here on the second chain that formed, because I already knew that once we wicked again into this demand zone, this wasn't going to hold anymore and I would see a break. So this trade tapped into the 1 minute sell zone, pushed off from there. Stop loss to break even on this idea was quite far away, so it was actually at this point here, because I knew that price was bearish. I needed to clear a swing low, which was this area here, because this whole leg here was the last bullish move that broke the 1 minute structure. So in order for me to be convinced that we are still going short and not to squeeze my trade, I decided to go break even only at this point in time. So to be honest, this choppy price action was not very fun to sit through, especially on this area here where it looked like it was going to come back and probably go higher towards this 1 minute extreme as well. How I handled it was, once I entered the trade, I set an alarm at this area here to go break even on the trade, and then I closed it. So thankfully I did, because this really would not have been fun to sit through. So once my alarm rang, I then drew up the new supply chain that was forming on the 1 minute and I started to trail it. Stop loss was put at break even somewhere around this point here, and then I went and waited on the 15 minute to look for targets. And that's when I noticed that when we shifted structure over at this point, breaking the minor highs here, initially I only had this bottom demand zone here at the extreme, but I noticed that this demand here was actually the one that caused the break of structure over at these minor highs. So when price pushed down into this area here, I decided to close 80% of my short trade because it could very well just bounce up from here and then hit towards these weak highs over at this point in time. So for me, by the time it hit this area, as you can see from the right side, it was already a 10-hour trade. It makes no sense to go lose all those profit just because I was stubborn and wanted to wait for this 50-minute extreme. For me, once I closed off 80% and my stop loss was actually locked at break even, I didn't bother about the trade. So I then continued to look for further shorts. So because at the end of the day, I'm still looking for price to come towards this demand zone over here, and I also know that these lows over at this point here were weak. So I left the 20% remaining to go towards this area here at the lows. On the second scale in that I did in this area here, let me share with you how I did it. So just remember this 50-minute demand zone here where I was expecting a pullback from, because this was the zone that caused the break of structure on the left. So if we go down to the 1 minute, we can see that when price reacted to that demand zone, we pulled back quite deep. And then we also have internal range liquidity over here. And if you use premium and discount on this level here, you will notice that this 2-minute zone over here was actually in the discounted area for sells. So I was willing to take and scale in another short trade at this point in time, just to go towards these lows here to trade all the internal range liquidity that was resting below this area here. So this trade gave me about 5R. I took it full position down to this area here because I knew that I was already playing with profits. So same thing with this trade. Once price cleared these lows here, so yesterday all the stop loss to break even were actually quite far away. It took quite a while for me to go break even on the trade. Once price hit this area here, I went break even on this trade, which as you can see is very near the TP, but rules are rules, I still got to follow them. Stop loss to break even on this second trade actually was a bit more aggressive, because once I saw that price cleared this break even point over here, I noticed a range forming over here. So because I didn't want to lose too much of my profits that I had made from the day, and also because I took the loss and the break even trade before, the idea was to minimize losses for the day. So I put my stop loss a bit deeper above this entire range, because if price should break this area, we're going up, and we're going up all the way to these points over here. So it makes no sense for me to take that loss and lose out on the profits that I had made. So stop loss on both trades were shifted down towards this range here, and then I just held it down firstly to these lows over here on the scale in trade. So with my scale in trades, I'm not very aggressive with them because to me they are bonus trades. The idea is just to increase my profits a little, with the original trade idea going down towards the lows anyway. I will take my profits within the original move itself, if that makes sense. The last 20% actually went all the way down from the original trade down towards these lows over here. As you can see, once we hit it, the reason why I didn't aim directly, if you look at, let me just zoom in. So if we look at where I put my TP, I did not aim directly for the lows at the wick, because to me, when price hit this initial area here, it started to form higher lows, if you can see. So to aim for the wick for just a few more pips would have been risky, because clearly buyers are sitting at this area holding price, because every time we hit this area, we see a very big move up. For me, I decided to be a bit more conservative and just aim for the bodies at this point in time where we wicked in, and then now we see that price is ranging during the Asian session. So yeah, those were the trades that I took yesterday. My learning point yesterday was, usually after I hit a loss in London, I tend to just give up and just walk away from the charts and do something else. Yesterday, I decided to come back and sit properly at the charts during the New York session, even though price was quite messy. I left a note on my journal to trust the buyers that higher time frame was bearish, and I was looking for trades down towards this area here and potentially long after that. So with that in mind, and that sitting on my desk right in front of my face, I actually managed to sit through the session and then just keep to my bias yesterday. So if you guys find that you're usually giving up on your bias, or you're flipping your bias during the day, just have a note at the side of your journal write down your original plan for the day and then just stick to it. So this way, at least from a -1 hour day, I ended up with 16 and the other trade was 5. So obviously it was scaled out, so I didn't get the full 21 hour, but it's still a profitable day at the end of the day. Hopefully this helped you guys. Let me know if you have any questions down below.